All right, good evening. We will call the meeting to order.
Welcome to Nixa City Hall. This video is going to provide you with an overview of how the City of Nixa conducts City Council meetings. We encourage everyone to attend and participate in City Council meetings. This is part of how democracy works at the local level, listening to the perspectives of subject matter experts, city residents, and other community members helps our elected leaders make more informed decisions. Before we start the meeting, let's review some of Council's rules of order. These rules help us make sure our meetings are orderly and efficient, while protecting the ability of everyone to have an opportunity to speak. Please be respectful of the person speaking and hold your own comments until it is your turn to speak. Presenters are invited by the Council to provide information during the meeting to the Council. These are informational presentations only, and nothing will be voted on at the time of the presentation. Presenters are not time limited. There are 2 times when all other visitors will be able to speak to Council. The first is during the visitors section of the agenda, and the second is during any public hearing regarding an agenda item. During the visitors section, anyone may speak to Council about any topic, whereas the public hearings regarding specific agenda items allow you to make comments for Council to consider before they make a decision on that topic. Whether you wish to speak during any public hearing or the visitors section, the following rules of order will apply. 1. Only one person should speak at a time. Be respectful of the person speaking and wait to speak until it is your turn. 2. Anyone speaking must do so from the podium and speak into the microphone. 3. You must first state your name and provide your address in writing to the city clerk before beginning your comments. 4. All speakers will be given 5 minutes to make their comments to the Council. The mayor or council may have additional questions for speakers after this 5-minute period. 5. All comments should be addressed to the mayor and council. 6. If you have questions about existing city processes, programs, or policies, or if you need assistance from staff on any issue, please contact City Hall during normal business hours and we'll be happy to assist you or answer any questions you may have at that time. The public hearing is designed to provide the public an opportunity to provide testimony and information to the mayor and council regarding the decisions they may be considering. Keep in mind this meeting will be recorded and live streamed with video and audio. Therefore, all comments relevant to this meeting must be spoken into a microphone, otherwise video viewers will not be able to hear you. In the case of a closed session or technical difficulties, some meetings or portions of meetings may not actually be recorded or streamed. The use of cell phones during council meetings is discouraged, so please silence all devices now. Thank you for watching, and thank you for engaging with the City of Nixa. The meeting will begin shortly.
Kelly Morris.
Here.
Matt Ogden.
Here.
Sean Lucas. Aaron Peterson.
Here.
Darlene Graham.
Here.
Zern Vess.
Here. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, did everyone have a chance to review the consent agenda? And would anyone like to remove anything from the consent agenda? Not, I will accept a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Did you get both them? All right, roll call please.
Matt Ogden.
Yes.
Aaron Peterson.
Yes.
Darlene Graham.
Yes.
Zern Vess.
Yes.
Kelly Morris.
Yes.
All right, and up first is our service awards. We have one tonight, Elizabeth Gibson, 15 years.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. It is my pleasure to congratulate Elizabeth Gibson on her 15 years of service with the City of Nixa. Elizabeth was originally hired 15 years ago for the Planning and Development Department, but eventually transitioned over to the Administration Department. Most of you know Elizabeth pretty well, but for those of you that don't know her, I would consider Elizabeth the true front line for the city. She works at the front desk and wears many hats throughout the day. She greets our customers, answers the phone, takes payments, works in the records room and with the business licenses, and she also answers a multitude of questions. She's a lot like Google for Nixa. Elizabeth is a great asset to the city. She's loyal, dependable, and provides great customer service. I think Mr. Godby would agree with me that Elizabeth also plays a vital role for the Planning and Development Department. She fills in when Lisa is gone, takes payments, and issues permits. The city is very fortunate to have an employee as dedicated as Elizabeth, and I appreciate her and her hard work tremendously. Congratulations, Elizabeth.
And I get to have my picture with you. So.
Yay.
All right, and next up on the agenda is our presentation from CBiz.
Yep. Mayor and council, tonight I'd like to introduce Ryan Blackwell. He's the director for compensation services with CBiz.
Thank you, Jimmy. So I did bring some hard copies. Do you all want a hard copy to follow along?
Sure.
Sure.
I'm impotent.
All right, good evening, everyone. Hope you are doing well tonight. As Jimmy mentioned, my name is Ryan Blackwell. I'm the director on the compensation team with CBiz. I was the project lead for this project. I was assisted by my colleague Joe Kurtz throughout the process. Joe is unable to be here tonight, but the both of us worked closely with the Nixa project team, Amanda and Jimmy, throughout the process. It truly was a collaborative effort. They were engaged, involved, gave us good feedback, and continued to kind of work together to come up to a final successful result. So they're certainly deserving of recognition for their contributions to the process as well. A little bit about CBiz. CBiz as a whole is a pretty big company. We have a little over 6,000 employees nationwide, a little over 100 offices, and we provide business services to our clients. A lot of different specialties within CBiz. We're compensation, obviously, but they're experts in payroll, benefits, accounting, finance, audit, right? Really anything you can think of. There's probably someone in CBiz with specialty in that area. The compensation team in particular, my team, we are a national practice. We're based out of St. Louis, Missouri, actually. What a national practice means is that we're the only group within CBiz that does comp consulting, so we get the opportunity to work with not only clients in the Midwest, but also from coast to coast. Specifically, we have a lot of experience working in the public sector with other cities, so we're certainly happy to have had a chance to work with the City of Nixa on this important project. So today's agenda, we'll talk about kind of the overall scope. So what specifically do we look at? We'll, of course, touch on methodology, give you an overview of the results. To date, we're still finalizing kind of the final results. So we'll go through an overview today, and then I know Jimmy and Amanda will kind of be in touch with final information once we put the final touches on everything. And then our recommendations, and then, of course, have some time at the end for some questions. So scope of the study, really the core is we're looking at what is competitive, market competitive base salary, total cash, benefits, and then total compensation. Total compensation being the sum of all of those components. We looked at the salary ranges, so developing new ranges for the city based on the updated current market data to make sure that the city can maintain their competitiveness now and over time into the future. A big piece of this project was conducting a custom compensation and benefits survey. So essentially, we are creating a survey ourselves in tandem with the city project team, distributing that to peer cities within kind of the mid-Missouri area and asking them to supply us with their compensation practices. And I'll talk a little bit more about that process as we get into the presentation. Job descriptions was another component, so we updated all of the city's job descriptions, taking into account current duties and responsibilities being performed by each employee in those roles. Reconciling current compensation levels to market, right? So we can design these ranges, but actually implementing is a different scenario. So we performed some analysis on what are the current pay levels, what is market, and what is it going to look like to actually implement the recommendations. And then we'll end with some overall program recommendations. So in the methodology, the very first thing that we did as part of this process is what we call a planning meeting. So that was a meeting where me and my team sat down with Jimmy and Amanda and got to know the city a little bit better. So we talk about challenges facing the city, compensation philosophy, what's currently working, what can we improve upon, what's not working. And that gives us a really good foundation for kind of the direction of the project to make sure that kind of the final results align with the city's philosophy and really kind of how you want to position yourselves within the competitive market. Part of that initial phase is collecting organizational information. So we collect employee information, job information. So as part of this process, we created what we call a job analysis questionnaire, or JAQ for short. That questionnaire is a questionnaire that asks employees to tell us about their job. So it's going to ask about primary duties and responsibilities of the role, education requirements, experience requirements, skills, knowledge, abilities that might be required for the role. And so we're using that information that we collect directly from employees as the basis for comparing each job to the market. So here's another slide reiterating that process, right? So we're trying to collect real-time information on what are employees doing on a daily basis, what is involved in each of their roles, and so essential functions, duties and responsibilities, required qualifications. The key here is that throughout this process, we are using the job content, so responsibilities to match to the market, not matching based on title. Different organizations might have different titling conventions, right? So by drilling down into the duties being performed, we can improve the accuracy of the analysis. So we then took that information and we drafted new job descriptions. So really what that's doing is, making sure that all the documentation is up to date, an accurate reflection of current responsibilities being performed, and also making sure there's a standard format, right? So the new job descriptions are uniform across the organization, standard format, so just a little bit more clean and easy to manage over time. Labor markets and competitiveness. So after the data collection phase, that's when we start into really the analysis phase. And part of that is identifying where you're competing for talent, right? So what labor markets are you potentially losing employees to? Where are you recruiting employees from? And we divide that into three categories. Those primary markets being size of organization, geographic location, and industry. Size of organization is going to play the largest role in salary levels at the leadership level of the organization. As a city grows, typically compensation levels also grow as an organization grows. On the other side, kind of at the hourly level, as an organization grows, those employees aren't necessarily making more money, you're hiring more of them to keep up with that increase in workload. But for this, we're looking at operating budget, that's a big one, employees, and then population to hone in on comparable organizations. Geographically, for the custom survey specifically, we're focusing on kind of the mid-Missouri region. So we're looking within, away from the major metro areas, Kansas City and St. Louis, but trying to say more central Missouri to come up with those peer organizations, which we'll see in a couple of slides. And then, of course, kind of what are compensation levels looking like in, obviously, the Nixa and Springfield area. Industry, the last major consideration here when we think about labor markets. Of course, city governments was a big focus of this analysis. We want to know, how does Nixa compare to other comparable cities within the area? For some jobs, they're going to be found, some jobs are found more broadly than just city governments, right? So some of the operational roles, kind of the easiest examples are like HR functions, IT, accounting, right? Those types of roles are found more broadly outside of just the city environment. So we did consider the broader market for some of those roles in addition to other city organizations. The last block you see here is placement. So identifying the labor markets is one thing, but figuring out how we want to position pay at Nixa relative to the market is sort of the last consideration here. So for market placement, in conversations with Amanda and Jimmy, we decided that targeting the 50th percentile of the market made sense as the organization's compensation philosophy. So the 50th percentile is the point in the market where half of organizations pay more and half pay less, also known as the median. So what that means is that when we're designing the salary ranges for the organization and assigning jobs to the range, we're using that 50th percentile as our primary comparison point to the market. So the ranges that we are coming up with doesn't mean that you're paying everyone right at the 50th. The ranges have room that will allow you to pay employees maybe with less experience or newer to a role, potentially lower than the 50th, and then have the opportunity to advance to the range over time as their skills and performance improve. And then room on the top, right, above the 50th to recognize employees that are high performers or have a lot of experience within their role. So onto the compensation and benefits survey, the custom survey that we sent to peer organizations. Those peers are identified on the next slide, and we'll look at those in a second. But we included 56 total jobs in the survey that we sent to those peer entities. We're looking for jobs that are going to be found in other organizations, just to make sure that we're getting data for them, right? If we have some obscure jobs that we don't think are going to be found widely, it doesn't necessarily make sense to include those. So 56 in total, which I do think was just about all of the jobs within the city. And then we asked participants to match their roles to those jobs within the survey, provide salary information, range information, experience information, and we then aggregate that data to use as a data set in our analysis when we're comparing Nixa's compensation levels to the market. The survey participants are listed here. 12 in total responded to our survey. I think it's a pretty good participation rate. I think we sent it to maybe 15 in total, and so getting 12 back is fantastic, and we were pleased with the results there. But as you can see, mostly in that mid-Missouri region, and again, we're selecting these based upon size of organization, geographic location, and then obviously there are other cities. A couple of these were used primarily for kind of looking at police and law enforcement jobs. Hazelwood was one of those, Greene County, where they were included more specifically for just those roles and not necessarily for the rest of the organization. And then of course, City Utilities of Springfield, primarily using that data for utilities roles as well. So once we've got the custom survey data back, we have identified the appropriate labor market influences. That's when we start to bring that data together. So I mentioned the custom survey data, but anytime you do a custom survey data, there are going to be jobs that we just don't get enough data for, right? There's insufficient data to use that as a basis for an analysis. So for all jobs, we're supplementing that custom survey data with our published survey data, specifically CBIZ's proprietary survey database, which is essentially a survey of surveys that allows us to slice and dice the data based on industry, size of organization, location, to make sure that we have good, robust data for all roles within the organization. Another piece of that process, of the data analysis process, is aging data. So by definition, survey data is backwards looking, right? By the time anyone gets their hands on survey data, it was collected a period of time in the past, so it's technically old data, right? So what we do is we age that data forward to a common point in time to make sure that when we're aggregating the data for our analysis, that pay levels, or that the data is where we think pay will be at our current point in time. So for this analysis, we're aging data forward to next year, right? So the analysis that we're working through with the project team will be ready for implementation this upcoming fiscal year. On summarizing the data, again, we're aggregating all of the data together, looking at base salary, total cash benefits, and total compensation across the board. A little bit more about job matching. I mentioned this before, but really it's using employee responses from that questionnaire, understanding, duties and responsibilities, qualifications, and then matching that information to survey descriptions to come up with the best match possible, and then obviously aggregating that data into the different kind of market ranges for each job. From there, we move into designing the salary ranges. So what we do is we take kind of that raw aggregate market data, we streamline that and convert it to a system of ranges, right, to help streamline and simplify compensation administration going forward. We're integrating the market data. Internal equity is a consideration as well when coming up with those ranges. And then we just have a brief description here in the middle. Salary ranges, you're probably all pretty familiar, but range minimum, midpoint, maximum, right? The range of midpoint, as I mentioned before, is aligned with the compensation philosophy, which is that 50th percentile of the market. So what the ranges do is they group jobs with similar market values together into the same range, right? Based on that middle of the market 50th percentile. We developed two pay structures as part of this process, one for kind of what we're calling general staff or non-police jobs, and then a separate structure for the police roles within the organization. And I mentioned this a little bit already, but yeah, we're grouping jobs together based on market value and internal equity, right? So we want jobs that are valued similarly within the organization and within the market, grouped together to establish kind of that systematic equity across the organization, and they're grouped based on the 50th, right? And then we have we've provided Jimmy and Amanda an opportunity to review, give us feedback, and make adjustments as necessary to make sure the system fits the city as best as possible. Financial impact analysis, another key component to any study like this. So we're in the process of modeling and kind of, I guess, finalizing the implementation component. But really, we're looking at it from two perspectives. The first being, is there anyone within the organization who's below our recommended ranges, right? So if there's someone below, that means they're outside of that market competitive range, and we want to make sure that we're bringing them to at least the minimum of the range, right? If we leave them below, that means they're at high risk of potentially leaving the organization due to being paid low relative to market. So we want to make sure we get everyone to at least within that market competitive range. From there, the secondary phase is compression analysis, right? So what this looks at is where employees are currently paid within the range and try to determine if we think that makes sense based on their experience within the role. So the most common example of compression is when you have two employees in the same job, right? So let's say an accountant. One of those employees was just hired. Maybe they're fresh out of college or have very little experience. The other accountant in the role maybe has 10 years of experience, 12 years of experience, but guess what? They're paid very close together, right? So what the compression analysis does is it says, hey, this 10-year employee in the same role probably should be higher within the range based on their experience, right? That's probably the fairer way to do it and commensurate with what they're bringing to the table. So that's what the compression does is, let's get people not only within range, but where we think they need to be paid based on their experience within the role. We also provided the city with some policies and procedures for consideration. So the goal here is that we want Amanda and the HR team to be able to administer this system going forward. And so a key part of that is providing some guidelines around how to do so. And so those policies cover things like annual compensation planning, what to do with increases, hiring pay, promotions, demotions, what if you create a new job, right? How to deal with that in terms of classifying it within the compensation system. So those are provided as well, and of course, we're available to be a partner going forward and answer questions and then help the city as needed over time. So once we obviously did our analysis, we had a meeting with the project team, and much like today, went through methodology, went through results, made sure they had a good understanding of kind of how to read the results, how to interpret them, talked about recommendations, got some feedback from them, and then we're still, like I said, in the process of finalizing that implementation strategy and cost. So into a high-level overview of results. The next three slides are, like I said, high-level comparisons of pay at the city compared to the market. This first graph that you see is looking at base salary compared to the market 50th percentile base salary. So you'll see across the horizontal axis there, we have market-based salary. Across the vertical, that is actual City of Nixa salary levels. You'll see blue dots and green dots. The blue dots represent a job that was benchmarked as part of the analysis. So we're simply plotting the market value of that job against the average current pay for that role. For each blue dot, there's a corresponding green dot, which represents the market value of that role, right? And then you have the blue line and the green line. The blue line is the city's, what we call pay line. It's a line of best fit. And then the green line is the market pay line. So as you can see, I mean, overall, looks pretty good, right? You aren't too far from that middle of the market, the 50th percentile. We do have some blue dots that do stray a little further away from that market line, right? And so part of the implementation is working with the project team to identify particular individuals and make a plan to implement the system and make sure everyone is within range. The next slide is benefits. So benefits was another big piece of the study that we looked at. Again, in this graph, same principles apply, right? Blue dots represent City of Nixa benefit levels, green dots represent market. So benefits are really right in line with market, even a little bit richer than market when we look at things on an employee-by-employee basis. And then last, 50th, total compensation. So this is bringing all of the different components together to look at total compensation at the city compared to total compensation on the market, looking at that middle of the market, 50th percentile. So this one's, again, pretty close to kind of how that base salary chart looked. So we're gaining a little bit of ground on benefits, but not enough to make a significant dent in how this chart looks. Keeping along with the benefits, we look at benefits really in two different ways, fixed cost benefits and variable cost benefits. Fixed cost benefits are things like medical insurance, dental, vision, disability, life insurance, right? Those benefits are typically measured as an average cost per employee. And then we have variable cost benefits, retirement, paid time off, right? Those are captured as variable cost. So in looking at this chart, we've got this first line, which is the fixed costs, medical and medically related payments. The market would say the average cost is $7,700 and change per employee for all of those benefits in that category. City of Nixa, a little bit richer in terms of how much you're contributing on behalf of employees, around $8,800. So we run a quick compa ratio on that, which is current pay divided by market, and that comes out to about 13% above market in terms of employer contributions towards those fixed cost benefits. The next line here, or the next section, is the variable cost, where it's payments for time not worked, right, is that first line. So that's vacation time provided, sick time provided, holidays provided. In the market, that average cost comes to about 19.1%, 16% at the city, so a little bit behind there when looking at just paid time off. And I know Amanda has paid time off on her radar to look at that and potentially make some adjustments to bring the city a little bit closer to market there. Retirement and savings, we have this displayed separately, one line for staff, one for police. But in both cases, you'll see, if we look at just comp ratios right here, about 30% higher in terms of how much the city is contributing for staff, and then about 17% higher when it comes to the police force. So again, looking broadly here at overall results, I mentioned compa ratio, right? This is what we're looking at here. Compa ratio is taking current pay levels, dividing it by the market to approximate kind of overall how the city compares. This first, picture is staff employees only. We have base salary in blue here. We have total cash compensation, the compa ratio. So if we look at base salary, this middle line represents right at market, right? So right at the 50th percentile. You'll see base salary right around 6-7% below the 50th of the market. Total cash compensation just a little bit lower behind market. And then we have benefits, right? So benefits a little bit richer. That helps us in terms of total compensation. And then total compensation all in, right, just above 5% below that 50th percentile across the board. Police, law enforcement is the second slide here. Again, we have base salary as the first line, so I mean, really close on average across the organization, about 3% below. Benefits, again, a little bit richer, and then total compensation very close. So our recommendations, and I alluded to some of these already, increase compensation for employees who are below the range to the minimum, right? That's really the highest priority recommendation here. Get everyone to at least within the range. And then compression-based pay adjustments, while secondary to the below minimum adjustments, we certainly think it's a fantastic idea and a fantastic way to make sure that you're being equitable across the organization. So we certainly recommend whatever those numbers come back to committing to implementing those compression adjustments as well. One of the things that will also help the city with over time is annual salary planning. So as part of our engagement, we will provide the city with a salary planning letter, which will provide guidance and recommendations around how much we think the city should set aside for merit pools on a yearly basis, right? So what we do kind of throughout the year is track sort of what wages are doing out in the market. And so we'll be able to provide some recommendations on what we think an appropriate salary increase pool would be to make sure the city is staying competitive with other organizations out there in the market. The other thing that we do and that we recommend is that the city actually update the salary ranges on an annual basis. Our analysis is as of a certain point in time. Specifically, the ranges are effective for, the upcoming year, 2024. So the market's always moving as time goes on, right? And so in order to keep pace with the market, increase your ranges, you want to increase those minimums, midpoints, and maximums as the years go by, right? If you don't increase them, that means you're falling behind market as the years pass, so we want to maintain our competitive position by increasing the ranges. So from there, we'll also provide recommendations on by how much we think the city should increase those ranges as well. The last note here is that we track wage movement, right, primarily. So that's how much are salaries increasing over time. That's separate from, a traditional COLA, right, which is sort of how is the cost of goods changing, right? Those two metrics are usually related, right? Usually when cost of living goes up, cost of labor or salaries also goes up, but it's not a one-to-one relationship, and sometimes their relationship can change over time. And then last, we recommend that the city do a study like this every 3 to 5 years. So, what we've provided, those annual updates that we'll provide over the years do a good job of approximating where the market is moving in the interim. But once you start to hit that 3 to 5 year mark, that's when, jobs and kind of the average increase can start to get out of whack. An example of that here is in this table, or this chart at the bottom. That middle blue line represents the overall market, right? So that's essentially the guidance that will provide the city on an annual basis. But there are going to be some jobs, like job B, that gray line on the top, where, the salaries for those types of jobs are increasing at a faster pace than the average, right? You'll also have jobs on the other side of that, like job A in light blue, where the salary levels might be increasing at a lower rate than the average, right? So by the time you get to year 4 over here, right, you can see we're pretty far apart between job A and job B, and so it's a good idea to sort of recalibrate the ranges and make sure that all of the jobs are still appropriately placed and appropriately valued within those salary ranges. So that is what I have for you all. Any questions?
So I do have, going back to the job description.
Yeah.
So when you started looking into the job descriptions and the job analysis questionnaire, how many people had a job role that was kind of out of whack? Not necessarily out of whack, but where they're kind of a jack of all trades and do all sorts of things. Like looking around the room right now, I know that there's a lot of people in here, especially in the back, where they can do about anything and they jump on anything, whatever they're asked to do. And so how does that, does that affect the compression analysis and like how does all that work when someone's doing the job of 3 people?
Yeah, our focus is on primary duties and responsibilities of the role. So it sort of depends kind of how how much they're performing those other roles on top of kind of their main responsibility. In some cases, if the value of that other, kind of that dual role would bring the value of the job up, we'll consider that. In some cases, those other jobs that they're performing are maybe at a lower level from a market perspective than their primary function. So we do try to consider that, and so those are going to be sort of organically baked into the range recommendations on a position-by-position basis.
Is that common with other municipalities, or do you think Nixa is a little bit higher than most?
It's pretty common in organizations your size where it's sort of a necessity that people wear multiple hats. So I'd say probably in line with what we would typically see.
Okay. I have some concern with that, with burnout, really.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I don't know, I've seen many people in here doing many different jobs. I mean, I've seen Matt in a hole before, so.
Brian, I had another question I forgot to ask. So on the market analysis every year, and whenever you provide that, that increase to the job market, is that done as a whole percent, or is that broken down into positions?
Typically, it's applied across the entire structure. So applied to everyone, doesn't differ based on position or range.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else?
So just as a curiosity, because we're trying to predict the future, are the
Yeah.
results shared, and they probably have the rights to it, are the results shared with some of the other people that are surveyed? So as we're trying to compare ourselves to other cities, if they're getting the same thing and they're looking to move up, if everybody's looking for the 50, then half of us are going to go up, or half of them will go up. So we'd have to kind of compensate for that, or is that kind of worked into your numbers?
That's worked in a sense in how we age the data, right? So
Excellent.
we're expecting other organizations to also give raises next year, right? And so by aging the data forward, we're sort of accounting for that market movement that happens from year to year. But you're right, we do, anytime we do a survey, we provide results to participants as an incentive to help them, or to coax them to give us their data as part of the process.
The other thing I was kind of curious about is, and I don't know that it would come into play, but when you were looking at roles and positions, is there any feedback on departments? So, we all kind of feel there are departments that are understaffed and really worked hard, and then there could be departments that we don't know that are inefficient. Maybe they're laid out a little bit different. Does that come into play a little bit?
It doesn't in this analysis. So there's not really necessarily a way for us to account for workload per se, right? So
Yeah.
we're focusing on primary responsibilities and matching to the market that way, but certainly workload, how thin people are stretched could come into play kind of on the implementation side as you guys and the project team kind of figure out the best way to roll it out.
Thank you.
And Mayor, Council, tonight, again, this is kind of a higher view, I guess, or an overview. So really, we're just looking for council tonight to give some direction on methodology. If this is something that, as we begin the budget process, as we're going to start that here in August, we're just kind of looking for some direction from council. And I do realize that the individual data is coming, and we will have those and what that is going to look like budget-wise. But for tonight, I'm just really looking for some feedback from council and any questions to Ryan, that you might have about that methodology that was utilized for this study.
I think one thing that would be important for us to see, which I know eventually we will, is what does that look like from a cost standpoint for us per year to put everyone where where we need them to be. Because obviously there's, being a municipality, we're fighting with the private sector and everything like that, as far as there's some things we can't compete with as far as salary, but if we can get closer, and it looks like we're on the right track with benefits, but kind of what exactly that's going to look like from a budgetary standpoint to put everyone where we need to be.
Yeah, and we will have those numbers for council very soon.
Okay.
We're just fine tuning that. We got a little more work back and forth with CBiz, but we're really close to being able to provide that to council.
I guess how does, I know there was some issues or grumbling with the last one of these, so I'm just kind of curious as to how staff feels about where we're at with this one.
I will let the rest of the leadership staff answer for that, but I will tell you my opinion. And I think that, and I shared this actually, I think, with Ryan earlier. I am very pleased with the methodology that they used for this study. I think it's understandable, it's quantifiable. I think we had some issues before, obviously, about whether or not it was good data, bad data. It was hard to understand, and that's what we heard from council, and it was a little confusing. And I think this one is very simplified to the point that it makes sense. So I was very pleased that the job that CBiz did for us. But that's just my opinion. I'd let any of leadership speak.
I'll just point out that for my staff, it's important for them to be able to see the data and do the math. And I think at the end of the day, when we look at this, we're going to be able to see the data and do the math, and it's going to make sense to them. I know with past studies, we had a hard time or a difficult time explaining that methodology or the math. And so I think in this scenario, it's going to be pretty straightforward and understandable, and there'll be confidence in the results.
My personal opinion, I was pretty impressed by it. I know that it's difficult at times because we'll take Matt, for example, and, there'll be another area that has parks, and they may have, one pool and a couple, basketball courts and stuff, but they may have 36 parks. And so finding the right formula to figure that out, I think, is pretty difficult, and it's been pretty clear the whole time that I've been reviewing the majority of this, so I like it.
All right, thanks for that.
So thank you.
Yeah.
Now, I will bring up, just because I know that the question's been asked to me from, and that is, and not to put Ryan on the spot too much, but there was some question about, and you'll see when the pay grades are broken down, there was some question about the 25th percentile, 50th, and 75th percentile. And I don't know if you want to quickly touch on that, Ryan, just how that worked.
Yeah. So the philosophy for the city was 50th percentile, right? So that's really the middle of the market. Half of organizations pay more, half pay less. And the way that we design the ranges is kind of looking at the tail ends of the data as well. So 25th percentile is sort of the lower end. That's the point where 25% of organizations pay less, 75% pay more. 75th percentile would be that higher end of the market where only 25% of organizations are paying more, 75% pay less. So the way we design the ranges is, the 50th is sort of at that midpoint of the range. The 25th percentile is kind of reflecting minimum competitive entry level pay. And then on the top end, we're aligning the maximums with that 75th percentile of the market.
Now, do you take into account, like, the amount of sales tax revenue generating businesses in a community that kind of, because if we had as many businesses as Springfield, obviously we could probably get up there higher to
Yeah.
So does that kind of play into?
It does,
figuring
based
that?
on kind of what we're pegging you for your operating budget, right? So we're trying to look at similarly sized organizations, with the exception of some like a Springfield, right? They're much larger, but their data points are also going to be higher within the data set, right? So it's not really, materially affecting kind of that middle of the market. It's not skewing the data, right? It's still a pretty stable base of data that's not going to be affected by some outliers like a Springfield that might be at the higher end of the range.
So your expert opinion is Nixa's doing pretty good. We got a little bit of
Yeah,
things to change.
I think
but
so.
all
I
in
mean,
all, we're-
kind of initial look, probably a little bit better than we normally see when we do a study like this. So I think you guys are pretty close, just a little bit extra to get you where you need to be.
Perfect. All right. Any other questions? No. Thank you very much.
All right, you're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. Visitors.
Jeremy Pinniger.
Hi there, everybody. I'm Jeremy Pinniger. I'm representing Nixa Hardware here this evening. We had an opportunity to put solar panels up at our store, and we were reading through some of the literature provided on the city's website and found that there's a limiting factor of 100 kilowatts is what the current limit is per location. Most other municipalities do that per meter, and we have a couple of meters at our store, but essentially what we're approaching with is a potential variance to make that a 200 kilowatt hour service, which would still not exceed 100% of our usage. Because I know the city would not necessarily be super interested in buying back power from us, and that's not what we're interested in, producing extra anyway. But we didn't see any provisions in the literature provided to expand beyond 100 kilowatt hour service. So that's where I'm at. I don't know what the best way to approach it is with planning and zoning or what, so I saw that you guys had a meeting tonight and came, so.
That's probably the best way to approach it.
Yeah. So there's a grant available, and so this is, we're utilizing a service that's using the Rural Energy for America program, which would help pay some of those expenses that we would have to implement that. But Nixa Hardware has not always been the leader of things as far as timely technology. So we're trying to maybe change that a little bit, and we'd like to produce as much solar power to provide for our store as possible. So basically, I'm looking for a variance on the way it's written now. And I don't know if that's a case-by-case basis or what all you need from me, but I'd be happy to provide or help any way possible.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
yeah, thanks.
And
Do
Mayor, if you don't
we-
mind, we answered the question that Jeremy had, is we don't do a case-by-case basis, but we can look at it and evaluate it as staff, and we'll evaluate the code, and then we can bring that back to council on any
Okay.
recommendations.
What do you think, just so he's aware, what are we looking at as far as the time frame to be able to get this done?
I don't see any reason we can't bring something to you at the next meeting.
Okay.
It wouldn't take a whole lot to, basically, our net metering ordinance is written basically straight off of state law. So that's, which are the minimums, of course. So we can look at a higher kilowatt per entity. Typically, though, you start getting past 100, you're talking about a commercial level or utility grade level solar amount. Not so much. I mean, probably, what's the biggest one we have from a house now? Maybe 30? Maybe 25? I mean, most of them are considerably smaller, which is what our net metering laws is written for. So you're almost getting to a point, and I'll look into it a little deeper and talk to some of our peers about, if they have like a commercial grade or a commercial level utility situation now where like he mentioned, if he doesn't think that their demand would exceed what they're already using, it's much simpler. A lot of that is written so you contract those at a utility grade, and it's not a situation where somebody's just producing way more than what they're actually using to turn around and sell it back. I think if people would realize that, they'd realize that it's not profitable for them to do it anyway, but we can certainly look at it.
Yeah, what he's saying is exactly right. We have no interest in being a utility company and selling utilities back to them. But with our calculations, based on a couple of years worth of data and working with the solar company, the 200 kilowatt hour system would be close to 86% of our usage. So we're still, you're talking about a 14% variance there, which, some months will be better than others, obviously, but our interest is not in providing excess utilities to sell back to the city. So we're just trying to do the best we can and be as green as we can and move forward in a progressive manner that has not been done yet, apparently, in Nixa. So, like in Springfield, you can search for over 100 kilowatt because their main basis is a 100 kilowatt hour system for homeowners. Makes perfect sense, but they do have provisions for exceeding that up to a 200 kilowatt hour system. So that's what I'd like you to consider. So,
Okay.
All right, thank you.
And that wouldn't need to go to planning and zoning first, would it? We could bring it straight back here. Okay.
The application and everything goes through planning and zoning, or it goes through the development department,
Yep.
because they actually do the internal electric inspections and those types of things. So that's why all of that goes through there.
Okay.
I don't believe it ever goes to the commission. It never goes to.
Okay. Okay. Well, and we have your contact info, so
Yeah, sure.
we'll keep you updated
Yeah, that's fine.
if we can bring it back to the next meeting, which would be in 2 weeks.
Couple weeks.
Yep.
Is it 2 weeks?
Is that right?
I think we've got a 3-week window this time.
Oh, okay.
Like the 14th.
Of course, this would be the one where I'm wrong. So it's 3 weeks. My apologies.
I can get in touch with you.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
And we've not gone through the application yet, because we wanted to see where we stood on this before we proceeded with all of the details in the application. You know, see if we can get to
Gotcha.
the variance and then go from there. And if we can't, then we'll work the best we can with what we got, so.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you. All right. Did anyone else want to speak? All right. If not, I will close the visitor section and move on to first reading Council Bill 2023-34.
First reading Council Bill Number 2023-34, an ordinance of the Council of the City of Nixa suspending the operation of Section 22-48A and 22-312A of the Nixa City Code for the purpose of waiving certain fees related to municipal utility service. Presenting is Finance Director Jennifer Evans.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. As you recall at the last meeting, I went over the changes to our ERP and the conversion process and how it had, caused a little bit of trouble getting bills out and getting timely payments from customers. And so Mayor Giddens had asked us to come back with an official piece of legislation to waive those penalty and disconnect fees. So
Robot.
this is what you have before you. Turned into a robot. How's that? Is that better? Nope.
No.
Be better. Anyway, this ordinance would just temporarily suspend those two sections in the code and would allow for us to not assess penalties and not do disconnects for the month of July and the month of August. So that would cover 4 billing cycles. Any questions?
Just as an update, though, to council, as far as the latest invoices and the PIN numbers and how is that going?
So we made it through the second billing cycle last week, and those bills were posted with no problem. We got them out, got them mailed. So the problems that we had with the first billing cycle was a little bit more smooth for the second billing cycle, so we did better. And I'm hoping and I'm pretty confident that the first billing cycle in August will even be better. So I think we are kind of headed towards the downhill of getting everything smoothed out, and I think people are getting used to the new system and being able to log in and pay their bill and see everything online. So it's better.
Has the call volume gone down since receiving
It
the
has,
PIN numbers?
and then we figured out that our call tree wasn't working like we thought it was. So we got it set up so where people can leave a voicemail now.
Perfect.
And we thought that was how it was supposed to be set up, and we found it wasn't. So we got that fixed. So Brian spends about half the day returning voicemails. So,
Okay.
but yes. So people are getting contacted. It just have to wait for a minute, but yeah. But call volume has decreased.
Perfect. Thank you. Any questions? All right, I will open up the public hearing on this. I will close the public hearing. Any other questions from council? All right, moving on, Council Bill 2023-35.
First reading, Council Bill number 2023-35, an ordinance of the Council of the City of Nixa amending Chapter 2, Article 1, Section 22-1 of the Nixa City Code for the purpose of establishing a method to allow certain utility connections outside the city limits. Presenting is Assistant City Administrator and Public Works Director Doug Cole.
It's a mouthful. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Since the acquisition of two of our neighboring water systems and a small sewer system outside the city, we've had a few property owners or developers inquire about obtaining one or more services for new developments outside of the city limits. Because our current code does not authorize the extension of utilities or service of utilities outside the city limits, not that we don't have any out there, because we do, we're presenting this council bill for your consideration. If passed, it would give us the authorization to extend water and sewer services based on certain criteria, which I'll get into. As mentioned, we've been approached by one or more entities, both commercial and residential developments up in the RDE and Tuscany Hills area. By providing these services, we'd be able to better serve areas not yet eligible for annexation in an orderly fashion. The extensions enhance existing service and improves our circulation, our pressures, fire protection for the area, as well as provide more efficient treatment and disposal of wastewater. In our particular case, we could use more wastewater effluent up in the northern part of, because we're having trouble meeting all the permit limits because the flow is so low into that small sewer treatment facility we have. The only other option for new developments outside the city is to drill more wells, continue the use of septic and waste holding tanks, and it's our belief that, ultimately that's detrimental to the area. Not only is drilling and maintaining additional wells more costly for the individual landowners, more private wells increase the possibility of contamination to the supply source, as well as, premature supply depletion in localized areas. If someone were to move into a rural area close by Nixa with a large industry and start, put a pretty good sized straw down the hole, we could have some real issues. However, if we could serve them the water from multiple areas, it makes it more efficient on the aquifer as well. Similarly, in the wastewater, use of holding tanks and septic systems can be much more costly for the property owners. And as I mentioned, though we don't own all the sewer systems in the area, we have enough that some growth should be anticipated, and actually we're hoping for some because, like I said, it would make it much easier for us to meet our limits at that treatment facility. Included in your packet is a proposal for Chapter 22, Article 1, Section 22.1, which is the code section that addresses utility services outside the city limits. You may recognize this. You had action more recently to modify for the RDE and Tuscany Hills customers. We needed to, one, authorize them to be able to be on city system outside the city limits without annexation. But the other thing that was done was we allowed them to sign a consent to annex so they could receive the inside city rate. And the main reason we did that was because we were purchasing the system and they were captive. So it was a generous offer for the city to be able to do that. And in the long run, we would benefit from that through the annexations over time. This proposed change is different in that we would actually allow customers to get on our system once they provided us with a petition for consent to annex for the future. The way it's written, it does not affect their rates like it does for those specific customers, which that's still in the code that you're looking at. In summary, these changes allow us to extend the services for the properties not yet eligible. It it provides an easier way for us to also track who's being served and who's not, out there. If we have a hodgepodge of all different types of utility and individual services out there, it's hard for us as a utility. If everybody's on the same system, it's a lot easier to watch that. Not that we can't do it, it's just, it makes it easier, and it's a lot more efficient that way. It's a lot more, the more you put in there, the more efficient it's going to be for all of the different customers as well as the city. So we intend to bring this back to a second meeting on August 14th for a reading. Also recommend, with our recommendation to approve it. But until then, I'm ready for any questions.
Any questions? Thank you, Doug.
Sure.
Yeah, I feel like this is pretty important mainly because there's a lot that plays into this that people don't think about and even take into account our police officers, and they can be on a call and have to drive through the county to get to a call just because there's so many spotty places, and I think that increases some liability issues and everything.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like they're going to be on it. Bring them in. We'll open up the public hearing. If anyone would like to speak to this matter, I will close the public hearing. Moving on to second reading, Council Bill 2023-33.
Second reading, Council Bill number 2023-33, an ordinance of the Council of the City of Nixa authorizing the mayor to execute an intergovernmental cooperative agreement with Christian County Emergency Services and several other local jurisdictions and amending the 2023 annual budget for the purpose of funding the Moswin Radio System project. Presenting is Police Chief Joe Campbell.
Mayor, Council, for many, many years now, Christian County E911 has worked to improve the reliability of law enforcement communication system. Through that time, we have identified several problems with our communications and our radios. Those include capacity issues, interoperability issues, and coverage issues. So we felt like it was very important over at E911 to address this because it's been an ongoing problem for such a long time. So they were tasked with to come up with a solution for this. And through a lot of hard work and dedication, they decided that the Moswin radio system that is statewide and run by the state of Missouri would be the most appropriate means to fix our problems. Through, again, a lot of hard work by a lot of different people, a plan was developed to come up and put forth to implement this particular radio system in the county, and that plan came with a price tag of $10.32 million. So again, that's a big number, but fortunately Christian County 911 was able to secure $8.5 million in federal appropriations through a grant. This left $1.82 million in shortfall to fully fund the project. With no other prospects to cover this shortfall, Christian County E911 is asking stakeholders in the county to participate in an equitable sharing effort to fund this $1.82 million shortfall. And they used a mathematical calculation that was based on jurisdictional population. And using that math formula, they're requesting $261,886.45 as a commitment from the city of Nixa as our portion. Again, if we were to move forward with this, it's been said that it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity because of the amount of federal funding that we were able to procure, and it would be a shame to lose that $8.5 million over the 1.2, or the shortfall that we have of 1.82. At this time, we know that we have ARPA money available for this, and we do recommend to use ARPA money for this funding. And of course, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? All right. Thank you, Chief. I will open up the public hearing. If you would like to speak to this matter. I will close the public hearing. Anything else from council? Anything else from staff? I will accept the motion.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
First by Ms. Graham, second by Mr. Ogden. Roll call, please.
Aaron Peterson,
Yes.
Darlene Graham,
Yes.
Zern Fest,
Yes.
Kelly Morris,
Yes.
Matt Ogden.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you for all your work on that, Chief. All right, moving on to Resolution 2023-33.
Resolution number 2023-33, a resolution of the Council of the City of Nixa authorizing the city administrator to execute a contract with Advanced Rehabilitation Technology for manhole rehabilitation services. Presenting is Jason Stutzman, Water Superintendent.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The manhole rehabilitation deal is part of a 2013 project where we are trying to reduce the inflow and infiltration into our sewer system. This year, we're going to have Advanced Rehabilitation Technology line 138 manholes throughout the older part of town, where I&I has been getting in there and making our sewer treatment higher over the years. When we first started this back in 2013, we were treating close to 1.8, 1.9 million gallons a day. And over the past 10 years, with all the lining of the sewer lines and the manholes, we have reduced it down to 1.5 million, which saves the city on energy cost and chemicals and everything like that. This was a cooperative bid. We was piggybacking off Joplin. We're going to do 138 manholes at a cost of $238,000, which was well within budget for the 2023 I&I budget. Do you have any questions?
Any questions? We almost did.
No. I answered it.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Stutzman. We will open up the public hearing if you would like to speak on this. We will close the public hearing. Anything else from council? Anything else from staff?
I'd just like to mention, kind of put a little bit of what Jason said in perspective. He mentioned how he has been able to lower the total volume going to the plant. Keep in mind, in that 10 years, we probably added 8,000 customer, or 8,000 population in that same period. So we're pumping a lot more water, we're sending a lot more to the plant to be treated, but we're not sending the I&I, and it's because of programs like this that Jason has, that Jason have. So.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. Nothing else? I will accept a motion.
So made.
Huh? Oh, just all in favor? Oh, I didn't know. You don't even need a motion. Oh, that's what I thought. No, I wasn't. Give me a second. Jeez.
I'll make it first.
First by Mr. Peterson,
I'll second.
second by Ms. Morris. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you. All right. Moving on. Resolution 2023-34.
Resolution number 2023-34, a resolution of the Council of the City of Nixa authorizing the city administrator to execute a contract with Ace Pipe Cleaning for ambient stream cured lateral connection services. Presenting is Jason Stutzman, Water Superintendent.
Same as the last project, Ace Pipe Clean does most of our sewer mains and lateral connections with lining to reduce the I&I coming into our sewer system. This year, we have really focused more on the manhole side than we did the sewer line because, to be honest with you, most of the sewer lines in the older part of town are lined and we're having great results out of them. We've got 4 connections, though, that it was missed in the past that we've had some trouble with over the past couple of years. ACE has come in with a bid for $8,600 through the 4 locations, which includes setup, mobilization, and the work, and putting the work into the manholes, or I'm sorry, into the lateral connections. Any other questions?
No, you're good. Any questions? No. All right, we will open up the public hearing. We will close the public hearing, and I will accept the motion.
Make the motion. Second.
First by Mr. Ogden, second by Mr. Vest. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, Resolution 2023-35.
Resolution number 2023-35, a resolution of the Council of the City of Nixa authorizing the city administrator to execute a contract with Worldwide Industries Corporation for tower cleaning and painting services. Again, Jason Stutzman, Water Superintendent.
I asked Doug if I could come up here and make this short and sweet and say, we're just going to paint it gray and put the logo on it and roll on with it, but he said I had to do a little more than that. So this is part of the strategic plan of updating the towers with the logo, new logos on them, and cleaning them and painting them. This tower here in the city will be tower number 1, which will be the original tower downtown on 203 East St. Louis Street. Built back in 1961. This tower has never had a complete overhaul. We've had to patch it a couple of times and do some odds and ends stuff to it. The cost of this tower was going to be expensive because that tower was originally painted with lead paint. So they're going to have to put a tarp all the way up to the top to sandblast it and catch all the lead paint and dispose of it. We were estimating that tower alone to be $225,000 to paint. Needless to say, the bids come back a lot cheaper on that one. The Tuscany Hills standpipe, we knew when we bought that system that tower was horrible. I mean, it's probably been in service since 2010 when the subdivision was put in. They've never maintenanced it. They've never done nothing to it. And if you drive by it, it's pretty much an eyesore. Yeah. So we put out for bid. We got 10 people or 10 companies to bid the project. The lowest bid was $128,000 to the highest bid was $429,000. We went with the second lowest bid, which was Worldwide Industries for $189,000. We didn't accept the lowest bid because they were an industrial painting company. They didn't specialize in water towers or nothing. They just do schools and industrial plants and stuff. I called around, talked to some cities in Missouri that had used Worldwide Industries since they're out of Pennsylvania. I talked to Independence. I talked to Perryville, Missouri, where they had good results. I called. They were doing some jobs up in Lee Summit, but I couldn't get no response back from Lee Summit, so I don't know what's going on there. But staff recommends using Worldwide Industries for this project. For $189,000, we've budgeted $250,000, so we're well within budget.
Perfect. Any questions? Thank you, Mr. Stutzman. That other tower, is it just going to be painted gray? The one down off AA?
Just a flat gray.
It's a small diameter standpipe, so.
Yeah.
So we won't be putting any logo or anything on it. It'll just be a solid color.
It's a slim can. All right, we will open up the public hearing. We will close the public hearing. Any other questions from council? Anything else from staff? I will accept the motion. So made.
Second.
First by Mr. Peterson, second by Mr. Ogden. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? All right. Anything else from staff?
This is just a reminder that tomorrow evening, or tomorrow late afternoon here, from 4 to 6, MoDOT and the city will be having a public meeting for the Main Street project from Tracker Road to CC and MoDOT's roundabout project that's in conjunction with that. So if you have an opportunity to come by, if you want to see the design plans, where they're at now, they're not completely final, but they're far enough that you actually have something to see and they're substantial. So, but anyway, that'll be tomorrow evening. It was just a come and a go. There won't be a special presentation.
Thank you, Doug. Anything else from council? Mr. Peterson. Oh, did you have something, Drew?
Sorry, I don't have a microphone back there. A couple things to make you aware of. On Wednesday night, we're going to have our One Nixa, One Read closing party over at Macaulay Park. Beginning at 7:30, we'll have our final book club meeting. And I'll remind you that that program was a partnership between the Christian County Library, the Nixa Schools, and the City of Nixa, and was all about kind of trying to encourage the community to read the same book during the same month with a message of kindness and neighborliness, and just kind of trying to promote a sense of community. And so the Parks Department will be out there selling concessions, and we'll be watching the movie. We think the sun will go down around 8:50. So it'll be kind of a late night, but hey, it's summer. So bring your families out and make some good family memories with your family. And we've invited the youth groups in the area to come participate, and we've invited the entire public, whether they've watched, whether they have read the book along with us or not. They're encouraged to come out and watch the movie with us. And also, I want to make you aware of two things that are now on the website. We have our annual police report is now an interactive kind of tool that you can click through on the website. It's going to show you kind of what that looks like. Here, you've got some different tabs here, and we've worked with the police department to get that up on the website. So if you want to look through the data. And this kind of provides us a new kind of template for doing annual reports in the future, where they'll be kind of more of an online tool, and we don't have to spend any money to print copies of them to distribute these annual reports. They'll just live as an online tool, and we'll save some time year to year when we update these things. That should come together pretty quickly. And we also have our new PAFR just went out on the website today. The annual police report has been up for a few weeks, but the PAFR just went up today for 2022. Sorry, Mayor, but we have to put the mayor who is the mayor as of December 31st, 2022 on there. So that's why you still see Brian Steele. And you can get through quite a bit of data there, and Macy did a really great job of doing some graphs and visualizations of our data. We worked obviously very closely with Jennifer to make sure all the data is accurate on there. So feel free to look through those things and use those as tools of reference for information about the police department and about the city's finances from last year.
And if you guys didn't read that book, it's a really good book. I would suggest doing that. One other thing that I wanted to mention, I don't know if anyone will actually hear this, but that I would like to hear, but I was told about a story of a couple Boy Scouts that saw a flag at someone's house, and they went and knocked on the door and offered to give the couple a new flag, and they took down the old one, put up a new one. So if anybody happens to know what Boy Scout troop that is, please reach out to me and let me know. I'd like to have them up here someday. So if you know of them, please let me know. I'll also put something out on Facebook about it as well.
And just a couple of a couple of other quick things. The Nixa Chamber of Commerce teacher luncheon is coming up on August 8th. So if that's something you want tickets for, make sure you let us know. And then, Matt, do you mind giving just a really quick update on the pool?
Yeah, so the pool's closed. Thanks. I'm kidding.
That was quick.
So we have been looking at the best options for the repair of the pool, and we've decided that the best option moving forward is to replace the entire recirculation system, recirculation piping of the pool. And so I'm in the process of getting an RFQ, working with purchasing to get an RFQ put together. We'll bring that to you at the August 14th meeting for presentation before we put that out. But we will hire engineers and architects to re-look at that project to ensure that we are replacing that circulation system accordingly. It will be a very large project. It will be very extensive, as some of that piping does go through the pool basin, and so we've got to figure out exactly how to do that. And so we'll use them to help us draw up that scope of work and ensure that we are doing that properly. And then we'll go out to go out for bid for a construction company to do that replacement here during our off-season. So things to come for you guys.
Yep, and then we're also, just to add on to what Mr. Kraus said, we're also looking at this as a potential opportunity to go ahead and make other improvements or upgrades that are currently needed. For instance, the pump house, and it's got some issues in there that we need to address soon. So we're looking at maybe taking care of that as much as we can, as much as we can afford, all at one time in the off-season.
I need to add some information about the chamber luncheon for the teachers. Passes are not usable for those. It's $30, but it pays for you and a teacher. The school has 94 new hires this year. So if you want to come, please do. We'd be glad to have you there. If you'd like to put some, well, Macy brought some baskets over for us and some other things to put in the swag bags. We appreciate that, but just want to let you know. Teachers would love to see you. It'll be at the junior high. Piccolo usually caters for us, so it's a pretty good deal. But you do need to call and let us know if you're coming.
All right. Anything else?
I move the city council go into closed session under section 610-021-1 of the RSMO so that council may discuss legal actions, causes of action, and confidential and privileged communications with their attorney. I also move that this closed session, records related thereto, and any votes taken by council during this session shall be closed under section 610-021 of the RSMO, and that city council shall stand adjourned after the closed session.
Second?
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Darlene Graham,
Yes.
Zern Vest,
Yes.
Kelly Morris,
Yes.
Matt Ogden,
Yes.
Aaron Peterson.
Yes.